The Galactic Palace of Zithra was the heart of the empire. It floated above the capital world like a crown made of silver light. Tall crystal towers touched the sky, and glowing ships moved in perfect lines around it. Inside the grand throne hall, hundreds of alien nobles stood in silence. Today was not a day of celebration. Today, a human stood before the throne. Commander Aaron Hale of Earth was alone at the center of the hall. Heavy energy cuffs locked around his wrists. 2 royal guards stood behind him, their armor shining like black glass. Every eye in the palace watched him. Humans were not welcome here. To the Empire, humans were loud, emotional, and reckless. They were a young species that had entered space too fast. Many believed they were dangerous. Others believed they were simply foolish. Whispers moved across the hall. So this is the Terran officer. He looks smaller than I expected. Humans talk about honor. Let us see it now. Aaron heard everything. But he did not react. He stood straight, shoulders back, eyes forward. His uniform was damaged from battle, but he wore it with pride. There was a small cut near his eyebrow, dried blood marking his skin. He did not try to wipe it away. At the top of the long silver stairs sat the alien queen. Queen Vylara did not move. Her skin shone like pale moonlight, and a thin crown of living crystal floated above her head. Her eyes were cold and sharp. When she looked at someone, it felt like she could see through their thoughts. The hall became fully silent when she finally spoke. "You entered Imperial space without permission," her voice echoed across the chamber. Calm. Controlled. Powerful. Aaron lifted his chin slightly. "Yes, Your Majesty." Gasps filled the air. A human answering so directly. It was almost disrespectful. The Queen's eyes narrowed. "You led an armed fleet across our border. That is an act of war." "My fleet did not fire a single shot," Aaron replied. His voice was steady. "We were chasing something far worse." A few nobles laughed softly. "There is nothing worse than human ambition," one of them said. Aaron ignored the insult. The Queen leaned slightly forward on her throne. "Explain." "There is a hidden force moving through your outer systems," Aaron said. "They attacked our colonies first. We tracked them here. They do not leave survivors." The hall filled with quiet whispers again. The Empire had detected small disturbances near the border, but nothing confirmed. The Queen studied him carefully. "And you expect us to believe a human warning?" "I expect you to check your own records," Aaron answered calmly. "You will find missing patrols." Silence. The Queen gave a small signal to one of her advisors. The advisor quickly stepped back, activating a holographic screen. Data began to scroll through the air. While they waited, the tension grew heavy. Aaron felt the stares. He knew many of them wanted him executed immediately. A human in the palace was already an insult to tradition. Suddenly, the massive doors at the back of the throne hall opened. The sound echoed like thunder. Everyone turned. Royal guards rushed in, clearly surprised. And then, small footsteps tapped quickly across the shining floor. A young figure broke past the guards. "Your Highness, wait," one guard shouted. But she did not stop. The alien princess, the only daughter of Queen Vylara, ran into the center of the hall. Her long silver hair flowed behind her. Her eyes, bright like stars, locked onto the human. Aaron's breath caught for a moment. He recognized those eyes. Before anyone could react, she ran straight toward him. Gasps filled the chamber. The guards froze. The nobles stepped back. And without hesitation, the princess threw her arms around Commander Aaron Hale. The entire palace fell silent. The energy cuffs around his wrists glowed softly, still active. But he did not move. He looked down at the royal child holding him tightly. "You came back," she whispered. No one understood. The queen slowly rose from her throne. Her voice, colder than space itself, cut through the silence. "Release him." But the princess did not. She only held the human closer. And for the first time that day, fear spread across the faces of the nobles. Because the princess never touched outsiders. Never trusted strangers. Yet now, she was protecting a human. And no one in the empire understood why. The throne hall remained frozen in shock. No one moved. No one even breathed loudly. The alien princess continued to hold Commander Aaron Hale as if she was afraid he would disappear again. Her fingers tightened slightly against his damaged uniform. Queen Violara stood slowly from her throne. The soft glow around her crown grew brighter. "Daughter," the queen said, her voice calm but heavy with authority. "Step away from the human." The princess did not obey immediately. Instead, she looked up at Aaron. There was recognition in her eyes. Not fear. Not confusion. Recognition. Aaron felt it too. A memory pushed into his mind. 2 years ago. A battlefield filled with broken ships and burning debris. His cruiser had detected a damaged escape pod drifting near an asteroid field. Standard protocol was to ignore unknown objects during combat. But Aaron had ordered retrieval. Inside the pod, they found a young alien girl. Injured. Weak. Terrified. She had expected death. Instead, she found humans. Aaron had carried her himself to the medical bay. He remembered how she refused to let go of his sleeve while the medics worked. She did not understand his language. He did not understand hers. But fear needed no translation. He had stayed until she slept. Later, a silent alien ship appeared and demanded the child's return. They never explained who she was. Aaron never asked. Now he knew. The princess finally released him and stepped back, but she stood at his side. "He saved me," she said clearly, her voice echoing across the hall. Murmurs exploded among the nobles. Impossible. A human. The royal escape pod incident was classified. The queen's expression did not change, but her eyes sharpened. "Continue," she ordered. The princess faced the throne. 2 cycles ago, during the border attack, my escort was destroyed. My pod was struck. I would have died in open space. She turned slightly toward Aaron. His ship found me. All eyes shifted to the human again. Aaron remained silent. He did not harm me, the princess continued. He protected me. He refused payment. He asked no questions. The advisor who had been reviewing data stepped forward nervously. "Your Majesty, records confirm a Terran cruiser rescued the escape pod before our retrieval team arrived." The silence grew heavier. The queen slowly descended the silver steps of her throne. Each step echoed across the chamber. When she stood only a few meters from Aaron, the tension became almost unbearable. "You knew she was royal?" the queen asked. "No," Aaron replied honestly. "She was a child alone in space. That was enough." A noble scoffed softly. "Humans lie easily." Aaron turned his eyes toward the noble but said nothing. The princess spoke again, stronger this time. "He stayed beside me until I was safe. He told his crew to treat me as one of their own." She faced the hall now. "They shared their food with me." Gasps rose again. Sharing resources in wartime was seen as weakness. The queen studied Aaron carefully. "You entered our space today chasing an enemy," she said slowly. Is it the same force that attacked my escort? Yes, Aaron answered. They do not attack directly. They strike from shadows. They test defenses. And when they find weakness, they erase entire worlds. Fear moved through the nobles like cold wind. The Empire had recently lost 3 outer patrol fleets. No survivors. No wreckage. Only silence. The Queen's voice lowered. Why warn us? If we fall, your species gains power. Aaron met her eyes without fear. If you fall, they grow stronger, he said. And when they are done with you, they will come for us. The princess stepped closer to him again. He does not lie, she said quietly. That was when something shifted inside the throne hall. Not acceptance. Not trust. But doubt. Doubt in their old beliefs. The Queen turned slowly and faced her advisors. Verify the human's claim. Search all border data. I want answers. The advisors rushed to obey. But before the Queen returned to her throne, she looked once more at Aaron. You stand in the center of my empire, she said. Unarmed. Surrounded. Yet you show no fear. Aaron answered simply, fear does not help. For the first time. A small pause. Not anger. Not hatred. Something else. Interest. And as the princess remained standing beside the human, the nobles realized something disturbing. The human they brought in chains might not be the weakest being in the room. The grand throne hall no longer felt like a place of judgment. It felt like a place waiting for bad news. Large holographic screens flickered to life around the chamber. Star maps of the outer systems appeared in glowing blue light. Red warning signals blinked at the edges of imperial space. The advisors worked quickly, their long fingers moving across floating controls. Data streamed through the air. Queen Violara returned to her throne but did not sit fully. She remained standing, watching everything. Commander Aaron Hale stood without chains now. The energy cuffs had been removed after the princess refused to leave his side. Even so, dozens of royal guards kept their weapons ready. The tension was sharp. An advisor finally spoke, his voice shaking slightly. Your Majesty, we are detecting unusual energy patterns near the Karthos corridor. Another screen zoomed in. Several Imperial patrol ships were marked as inactive. No distress signals, the advisor continued. No debris fields. Aaron stepped forward slowly. That's how they operate. Some nobles glared at him, but no one interrupted. They disable communications first, Aaron explained. Then they attack from blind spots. Fast. Precise. Silent. The princess listened carefully, her bright eyes focused on the moving maps. Queen Violara looked down at the human again. You speak as if you have fought them before. We have, Aaron answered. We lost 12 colonies before we understood their pattern. Murmurs spread across the hall. Impossible. 12 worlds. Humans exaggerate. Aaron did not react to the whispers. He pointed toward the hologram. Watch the red signals. They form a curve. The advisor adjusted the display. The red signals indeed shaped a slow arc through imperial space. They are not randomly attacking, Aaron said calmly. They are pushing you toward the core. The realization hit the chamber like a shockwave. They are hurting us, one noble whispered. The princess looked at her mother. They are moving toward the capital. Silence fell again. Queen Violara's expression hardened. How long? Aaron looked at the data carefully. If they continue at this speed, less than 2 cycles. Gasps filled the throne hall. The capital world had never been threatened in over 1,000 years. Suddenly, another advisor spoke urgently. High-energy spike detected. Unknown fleet entering the Carthos corridor. The hologram shifted. Dark shapes appeared at the edge of the system. Sleek. Sharp. Unfamiliar. Not imperial. Not human. The room felt colder. The Queen's voice became sharp and commanding. Activate all defense fleets. Seal inner sectors. Orders spread instantly through the palace network. Alarms began to sound faintly in the distance. Aaron watched the enemy formation closely. His face did not show panic. Only focus. They are testing you, he said. This is not the full force. You claim to know their strategy, the Queen replied. Then speak. Aaron stepped closer to the holographic display. Guards moved, but the princess raised her hand slightly, stopping them. They attack from 3 sides, Aaron explained. The visible fleet distracts. The real strike comes from hidden ships using dark phase drives. Several nobles looked confused. We have scanners for that, one protested. Aaron shook his head. So did we. Before anyone could answer, a second alarm rang out. Your Majesty, an advisor shouted. Multiple unknown signatures detected behind our outer defense grid. The chamber erupted in noise. They bypassed the perimeter. That is impossible. But the screens showed the truth. Dark shapes appeared behind imperial lines. Exactly as Aaron predicted. The princess looked at him with wide eyes. Not fear. Trust. The Queen rose fully now. For the first time, there was no doubt in her voice. To all fleets, prepare for full combat response. She turned slowly toward Aaron. You knew this would happen. Yes. And you still entered our territory alone. Aaron met her gaze. If I came with my fleet, you would have fired on us. The nobles said nothing. Because it was true. The Queen studied him carefully. You risked your life to warn an empire that does not trust you. Aaron answered quietly, because if your empire falls, the galaxy burns. Another explosion marker appeared on the hologram. An outer defense station went dark. The enemy had begun their assault. The throne hall shook slightly from distant energy impacts. Fear spread through the nobles now. Real fear. The princess stepped closer to Aaron. Tell us what to do, she said. It was a simple sentence. But in that moment, the future ruler of the empire had chosen to trust a human. And Queen Violara understood something important. The human standing before her was not begging for respect. He was trying to save her world. Outside the palace, war had already begun. Inside the throne hall, history was about to change. The palace trembled again as distant explosions lit up the sky outside the crystal walls. Through the high windows of the throne hall, streaks of light flashed across the atmosphere. Imperial defense cannons fired in long blue lines toward the invading ships. The holographic battlefield display grew crowded with signals. Red marks multiplied. Several Imperial ships blinked out one by one. Panic began to spread among the nobles. Our outer ring is collapsing. They are too fast. Redirect the 7th Fleet. Orders were shouted across the chamber. Commanders on distant bridges waited for instructions. But the Imperial fleet was defensive by nature. It had not faced an enemy like this before. Commander Aaron Hale watched the display carefully. His mind worked fast. He had seen this pattern before. They are splitting your fleet, he said loudly. No one answered him at first. They want you to defend every point, Aaron continued. If you spread too thin, they break you one section at a time. Queen Violara's eyes locked onto him. What would you do? The hall fell silent again. A human giving orders inside the imperial palace was unthinkable. Aaron stepped forward without hesitation. "Pull back your outer ships," he said. "Let them believe they are winning." Gasps filled the air. "Retreat," one noble shouted. "Coward strategy." Aaron ignored the insult. "Create a narrow path," he explained. "Guide their main fleet toward the capital defense corridor. Compress their formation." The princess looked at the hologram. "Trap them." "Yes," Aaron said. "They rely on speed and surprise. Remove space to maneuver." An advisor hesitated. "Your Majesty, trusting him." "Enough," Queen Violara said sharply. She descended the throne steps once more, standing beside Aaron before the glowing map. "For this battle," she declared, "the human speaks with my authority." Shock hit the room harder than any explosion outside. The princess stood proudly at Aaron's side. Fleet commanders across the system received the new orders. Imperial ships began pulling back in controlled movements. Defense cannons shifted positions. A narrow corridor formed between two heavy asteroid fields near the capital's orbit. The enemy ships advanced confidently, firing at retreating targets. "They think we are afraid," a noble muttered. "Good," Aaron replied quietly. The hologram showed the enemy fleet entering the corridor. "Now," Aaron said. "Activate hidden squadrons behind the asteroids." Queen Violara gave the command instantly. From the shadow of the asteroid fields, dozens of Imperial warships ignited their engines and surged forward. Massive gravity nets activated across the corridor, slowing enemy movement. The invaders tried to scatter. But there was no room. "Seal the exit," Aaron ordered. Capital defense stations powered up. Energy barriers locked the corridor from both ends. For the first time, confusion appeared in the red enemy signals. "They are trapped," an advisor whispered. "Focus fire on their command ships," Aaron said calmly. "Break their coordination." Imperial fleets unleashed concentrated beams of blue plasma. One enemy command vessel shattered in a silent explosion. Then another. Without leadership, the remaining enemy ships began colliding in tight formation. The battle shifted quickly. Cheers erupted among the fleet channels. The princess watched with shining eyes. The nobles stared at the human in disbelief. The impossible was happening. The invading fleet, feared across multiple systems, was collapsing within minutes. One by one, red signals faded from the display. Finally. Silence. Only Imperial blue signals remained. The capital world was safe. The throne hall stood in stunned quiet. Commander reports flooded in. Enemy fleet destroyed. 0 civilian losses. Minor fleet damage only. Queen Violara slowly turned toward Aaron. "You predicted every move," she said. "They follow patterns," Aaron answered. "Every enemy does." A noble stepped forward carefully. The human strategy saved the capital. There was no anger in his voice now. Only respect. The princess smiled softly and looked at Aaron. "I knew you would protect us again." Aaron did not smile back. His eyes remained on the hologram. "They will return," he said quietly. The celebration sounds in the fleet channels lowered. Queen Violara studied him carefully. "You destroyed their fleet." Aaron shook his head. "No. We destroyed a scouting force." A chill moved through the hall. "If this was a test," the queen said slowly, "then the real attack is still coming." Aaron finally looked up at her. Yes. The victory felt smaller now. Outside, debris from the battle burned across the sky like falling stars. Inside the palace, the nobles no longer saw a prisoner. They saw a commander. And for the first time in imperial history, A human had taken control of the Empire's defense. And won. The fires in the sky burned for hours. From the palace windows, streaks of orange light crossed the dark horizon as pieces of destroyed enemy ships fell through the atmosphere. The capital world had survived. The people celebrated in the lower cities. But inside the grand throne hall, no one celebrated loudly. They understood now. This was only the beginning. Commander Aaron Hale stood quietly near the holographic display, studying the empty space where the enemy fleet had been. The princess stood beside him, no longer as a frightened child, but as a future ruler who had seen war with her own eyes. Queen Violara sat upon her throne again, but her posture had changed. She no longer looked down at the human with cold judgment. She looked at him with thought. "The fleet commanders confirm your claim," she said at last. The destroyed vessels carried long-range markers. They were mapping our core systems. A low murmur passed through the nobles. Aaron nodded once. "They are gathering information. Measuring defenses. Testing response times. And now they know," one advisor said quietly. "Yes," Aaron replied. "Now they know you are not easy prey." The queen stood slowly. "For centuries, this empire believed humans were reckless and weak," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Today, a human prevented our destruction." Silence followed her words. The nobles did not argue. They had seen the battle. They had seen the predictions come true. The queen descended the steps of her throne one final time and walked toward Aaron. The guards did not interfere. She stopped in front of him. "You entered our space without permission," she said. "Yes." "You challenged our authority." "Yes." "You stood in chains and did not beg." Aaron met her gaze calmly. "I had nothing to beg for." A faint, almost invisible smile touched the queen's lips. "You also saved my daughter." "Twice." The princess stepped forward, her voice steady. "Mother, the empire cannot face what is coming alone." The hall grew quiet again. This was the true moment. Not the battle. Not the hug. This. Queen Violara turned to face her court. "The Shadow Fleet will return," she declared. "And when they do, they will not test us. They will strike to erase us." The nobles listened carefully. "For the first time in imperial history," she continued, "we will form a military alliance beyond our species." Shock spread across the chamber once more. "With humanity," the queen finished. Aaron felt every eye in the hall turn toward him. Some still carried doubt. But most carried something new. Respect. The princess walked to Aaron's side again, but this time she did not cling to him. She stood beside him as an equal. "The human commander will remain as strategic advisor to the throne," the queen announced. A noble stepped forward carefully. "Your Majesty, this decision changes everything." "Yes," the queen replied. "It does." She turned back to Aaron. "Commander Hale of Terra," she said formally. "Will you stand with the Empire not as a prisoner, but as an ally?" The hall held its breath. Aaron thought of Earth. Of the colonies lost. Of the enemy ships hiding in darkness. Then he answered clearly. "I will." The words echoed across the chamber. The princess smiled openly now. For the first time since he entered the palace, Aaron felt the tension fully leave the room. The queen raised her hand. In a gesture unseen for thousands of years. She bowed her head slightly toward the human. It was not submission. It was acknowledgement. Gasps filled the hall. The empire had chosen to remember. To remember who saved their future ruler. To remember who warned them of the coming storm. And to remember that strength did not always wear the same face. Outside, the last fragments of enemy ships burned away in the sky. But beyond the stars, in the deep darkness between systems, something watched. Something larger. Something waiting. And now, for the first time, humanity would not stand alone. The palace had fallen silent once in shock. Now it stood silent in unity. Because the day the alien princess ran into a human's arms was the day the galaxy began to change.